Did you know about this warrant before he moved in?
Yes, I did.
Not a testament to your good judgment.
For decades, television has had no shortage of judges, but only one became an empire. Judy Sheindlin, known to the world as Judge Judy, was never just another face in a black robe. She was a firebrand, a sharp-tongued disciplinarian who transformed daytime television into her own courtroom spectacle. Her voice cut like a knife. Her glare could silence a nation. She scolded, humiliated, and delivered rulings in minutes, building her brand on the promise of blunt honesty and zero tolerance for excuses. People tuned in not just to watch justice. It was the performance, the theater, the ruthless verbal takedowns. And Judy thrived on it. She became one of the most recognizable figures in America, a cultural icon, wielding a gavel. But now shocking revelations are surfacing about her personal life, her money, her betrayals, and the feuds that boiled behind the cameras. For years, she ruled the courtroom. But what if the biggest case Judge Judy ever faced was her own legacy? She didn't come from privilege or glamour. Judy Sheindlin was born Judith Susan Blum on October 21, 1942 in Brooklyn, New York, into a tough Jewish household that valued discipline and hard work. Her father, a dentist, and her mother, described by Judy as the greatest thing since sliced bread, raised her in an era where women weren't encouraged to think about big careers. But Judy was different from the start. She was sharp-tongued as a child, quick to call out nonsense, and unwilling to let anyone talk down to her. Teachers saw her as bright but abrasive. Family members recall her as the kind of child who argued relentlessly, not for the sake of rebellion, but because she believed she was right. That bluntness, which would one day make her millions, was already her calling card. By the time she was in college, Judy had decided that she wasn't going to fit neatly into the expectations of her time. Law was a man's world, and women who tried to enter it were often dismissed, belittled, and pushed aside. But Judy didn't care. She earned her law degree and entered the legal system headfirst, becoming a prosecutor in New York's family court. The environment was brutal: broken families, abuse cases, custody wars, but Judy thrived. Her reputation grew quickly. Lawyers feared her because she didn't tolerate excuses. Parents dreaded facing her because she cut through lies like a blade. She didn't waste words, didn't entertain theatrics. Her rulings were quick, her punishments sharp. In an arena of emotional chaos, Judy was the iron fist. The media couldn't ignore her. By the late 1980s, a profile in the Los Angeles Times captured her sharpness. But it was a 1993 piece on 60 Minutes that changed everything. The profile introduced Judy to America as the toughest judge in America. Viewers were captivated by her no-nonsense demeanor. She wasn't just another judge, she was entertainment. TV executives saw gold. Within 3 years, Judy Sheindlin wasn't just ruling in a New York courtroom. She was presiding over a brand new television show that would redefine daytime TV, Judge Judy, which premiered in 1996. The rise was meteoric. Judge Judy was unlike anything else on air. Other courtroom shows had judges who listened politely, who explained the law. Judy was different. She cut people off mid-sentence, ridiculed bad decisions, barked at liars, and turned excuses into punchlines. Audiences loved it. Ratings soared. And within a few years, Judge Judy became the #1 daytime show in America, surpassing soap operas, talk shows, and game shows. It would remain there for more than 2 decades. Judy's empire grew with it. By the 2000s, Judy was not just a television star. She was a brand, a phenomenon, and the highest-paid personality on television. At her peak, she earned $47 million per year, dwarfing the salaries of other TV hosts. She wrote books that became bestsellers. She created spin-offs, including Hot Bench, which introduced a panel of judges arguing over verdicts. Her face was on merchandise. Her quotes became memes. She had secured her place as America's courtroom queen. But as the empire expanded, whispers began to circulate. Behind the scenes, there were tensions. Crew members resented that while Judy pocketed tens of millions, staffers' salaries lagged behind. Producers grumbled about her absolute control over the show's direction. And then there were the lawsuits. By the 2000s, disputes with CBS over who controlled the rerun rights to Judge Judy were bubbling. To the outside world, her empire looked untouchable. Inside, cracks were already appearing. The iron-fisted judge who demanded fairness in her courtroom was facing accusations of unfairness in her own empire. Her personal life wasn't untouched by drama either. Judy married young, but her first marriage ended in divorce. She later remarried Judge Jerry Sheindlin, a man as fiery and opinionated as she was. Their union was legendary for its volatility, passionate but marked by explosive arguments. At one point, They divorced, only to reconcile and marry again. Judy herself has admitted that their relationship wasn't easy. They clashed often, but their bond was unbreakable. Together, they raised a blended family of children and stepchildren. Yet even at home, Judy's courtroom demeanor seemed to follow her. Friends described her as controlling, relentless, obsessed with order and money. Her children respected her, but sometimes kept their distance, knowing she was not the warm, doting figure audiences saw on TV. The duality was striking. On screen, she played the grandmotherly disciplinarian for America. Off-screen, those closest to her often felt she never stopped presiding. The gavel, it seemed, never truly left her hand. Then came the controversies over money and power that threatened to tarnish her empire. In contract negotiations with CBS, Judy demanded enormous salaries, knowing full well the network couldn't afford to lose her. At one point, she revealed that she would present her salary demands on a piece of paper, slide it across the table, and if CBS hesitated, she was ready to walk. They never did. She always got what she wanted, but others began to resent her ruthless business style. An agent once sued her, claiming she had cut them out of profit-sharing deals. CBS found itself embroiled in disputes with Judy over the rights to Judge Judy reruns. Judy's sale of the show's library for nearly $100 million shocked even her closest collaborators. Former allies accused her of betrayal, claiming she had pocketed fortunes without sharing credit or profits with those who helped build her brand. Behind closed doors, stories circulated about her diva-like demands: private jets, luxury dressing rooms, wardrobe budgets that ballooned into the millions. The woman who preached fairness in courtrooms was accused of hoarding wealth and power off-camera. The most painful betrayals came from within her own circle. Her longtime producer, once a trusted friend, turned against her after she sold the rerun rights without including them in the deal. Lawsuits followed, claiming millions in damages and accusing Judy of deceit. What had once been a partnership built on loyalty and shared vision became a battlefield. Allies became enemies. Friends became litigants. For Judy, the courtroom drama had followed her into real life. The gavel that once brought order now divided her closest circle. As the years passed, the cracks in her public image widened. Viral clips of Judy berating litigants began circulating online, not as moments of justice, but as examples of cruelty. Younger audiences saw her less as an icon and more as a bully. Think pieces emerged in newspapers and blogs, arguing that her brand of justice was nothing more than televised humiliation. What once made her a legend was now being reframed as toxic. Social media mocked her. Memes turned her glare into a joke. The once unquestioned authority of Judge Judy became polarizing, a symbol of another era. But Judy didn't flinch. When asked in interviews about the criticism, she brushed it off. "I am who I am," she would say. She rarely engaged with backlash, her silence often fueling speculation. When she did speak, her words were sharp and unapologetic. She argued that honesty was her brand, and if people couldn't handle it, that was their problem. To some, it was confidence. To others, arrogance. Her refusal to apologize mirrored her philosophy. Never explain, never back down. Was this a power move, or was it the stubbornness of someone who believed she was untouchable? Now, as headlines erupt once again around her, the question of legacy looms larger than ever. Judge Judy remains one of the most successful television personalities of all time. She redefined courtroom television. She became a billionaire. She turned blunt honesty into a career that spanned decades. But her story isn't just one of triumphs. It's also one of lawsuits, betrayals, controversies, and family drama. She gave the world quick justice on TV, but off-screen, the verdict on her life is still out. For years, Judge Judy slammed her gavel as if nothing could shake her. But now, behind the headlines and the lawsuits, we see a different truth, one filled with money, betrayal, and controversy. So we ask you, does this latest chapter ruin her legacy, or does it only prove she was playing the toughest role of her life? The gavel may have fallen for the last time on her television show, but the case of Judge Judy's legacy is still being argued in homes, in headlines, and in history. Judge Judy's toughness wasn't just an act she put on when the cameras rolled. It was forged in the fire of her earliest years. Growing up in Brooklyn in the 1940s and 50s, she was raised in a household where discipline ruled. Her father worked long hours as a dentist, her mother managed the home, and Judy often described her as witty, smart, and the real powerhouse of the family. Judy absorbed that edge. In classrooms, she was quick with her hand, quicker with her tongue. Teachers found her bright, but she challenged authority constantly. At a time when most young girls were being guided toward secretarial schools, Judy told people she wanted to be a lawyer. People laughed. She didn't. In college and later at law school, she faced the kind of systemic sexism that would crush softer spirits. Male professors dismissed her. Colleagues smirked at her ambition. But Judy wasn't looking for their approval. She powered through, determined not just to practice law, but to dominate it. When she became a prosecutor in New York's family court, the cases she took on were messy, often heartbreaking. Neglect, abuse, bitter custody disputes. But Judy thrived in that chaos. She didn't bend under emotional pleas. She was efficient, curt, and often terrifying to those who faced her. Parents who neglected their children, deadbeat spouses. She had no patience for any of them. Within a few years, she wasn't just another prosecutor. She was a figure whispered about in court halls. That's Shaindlin. Don't waste her time. The media spotlight arrived slowly. The Los Angeles Times profiled her, intrigued by her demeanor. But it was that 1993 60 Minutes feature that changed her life forever. America met a judge who didn't smile sweetly, didn't pad her words with legalese, but cut straight to the truth. They saw her barking baloney at excuses, and they loved it. Executives realized they weren't just watching a judge, they were watching a star. 3 years later, Judge Judy hit daytime television, and the nation tuned in. Once Judge Judy began, the set became her kingdom. Staffers quickly learned that Judy controlled every detail, down to her wardrobe collars and the cut of her robe. Producers might suggest a direction, but Judy had the final say. The show's bailiff, Petrie Hawkins Bird, became a fan favorite, but even he admitted Judy called every shot. She didn't just preside over litigants, she presided over everyone on the payroll. Crew members often said the energy on set mirrored her mood. If Judy was sharp that day, everyone felt it. If she was warm, rare as that was, the room relaxed. Her reign was absolute, but her reign at home was no less fiery. Judy's marriage to Jerry Shaindlin became almost as legendary as her courtroom persona. Jerry was no pushover. He was a judge himself, and together they were two combustible forces. Friends described their dinners as courtroom sparring matches. Arguments were loud, interruptions constant, tempers quick. They divorced in the early 1990s, weary of the storm, but found they couldn't stay apart. They remarried, proof that their bond, however volatile, was unbreakable. Yet their children grew up with a mother who was never off duty. Judy was respected, but not always approachable. Her children and stepchildren admired her success, but sometimes felt overshadowed by her relentless drive. Even family holidays, some recalled, could feel like a trial. She didn't sugarcoat opinions, didn't soften her critiques. America saw a grandmother figure. Her family saw a judge at the dinner table. Then there were the betrayals that turned her empire into a battlefield. Judy's control over Judge Judy made her fabulously wealthy, but it also alienated allies. One lawsuit claimed she had cut her agent out of profits worth tens of millions. The most infamous clash came when she sold the library of Judge Judy reruns for nearly $100 million, without including her longtime producer in the deal. For years, that producer had been her partner, helping shape the show's tone, standing beside her as it grew into a juggernaut. When the sale went through, the producer claimed it was betrayal. Lawsuits flew. Millions were at stake. Suddenly, the courtroom queen was facing legal fire of her own. And while she eventually won, the damage was lasting. Allies had become enemies. Friendships had become filings. For someone who spent her life preaching fairness, Judy was accused of practicing something very different when it came to money and power. Even her relationship with CBS grew sour. While they had been her most loyal backers, tensions grew over syndication rights and how profits were split. Judy was unrelenting in negotiations. At one point, she famously walked into the room, handed over a sealed envelope with her salary demands, and said, "If you don't agree, I'll walk." CBS always agreed. She knew her value. She knew her power. But the resentment inside the industry grew. Rumors circulated of staffers struggling to make ends meet while Judy flew private and built mansions. Media outlets began calling her greedy, out of touch. Was she the fair arbiter she claimed to be? Or just another mogul obsessed with money? As social media took hold in the 2000s and 2010s, Judy's image faced a new kind of scrutiny. What once played as tough love began to look cruel in the age of viral clips. Compilations of her eviscerating litigants spread online, stripped of context, framed as bullying. Think pieces called her America's meanest grandma. Younger audiences didn't remember the cultural impact of her show's early days. They just saw a woman berating people on screen. Memes turned her into a punchline. On TikTok, her raised eyebrow or sharp dismissal was mocked rather than admired. Public opinion fractured. Some still adored her. Others saw her as relic of harsher times. And through it all, Judy rarely explained herself. She gave interviews, but never apologized apologized. "I am who I am," she said. When pressed about her wealth or her critics, she snapped back with curt honesty. "I don't care." Some admired the confidence. Others saw arrogance. But silence was a strategy. She didn't engage in online spats, didn't issue public mea culpas. She believed in her brand. Sharp, unapologetic, immovable. Whether it was strength or stubbornness, it kept her untouchable. As she transitioned into her new show, Judy Justice, streaming on Amazon's Freevee, she tried to reinvent without changing too much. She brought in her granddaughter, Sarah Rose, as a law clerk, showing a softer side to family. But the old cracks followed her. Fans whispered that the magic was fading. Headlines focused less on her rulings and more on her wealth, her lawsuits, her legacy. And now, that legacy is the case being argued. Judy Sheindlin has accomplished what few ever could. She ruled daytime television for over 2 decades. She became the highest-paid TV personality in history. She created an empire of reruns, spin-offs, books, and licensing deals worth hundreds of millions. She turned blunt honesty into a billion-dollar brand. But legacies are not written only by triumphs. They are also shaped by scandals, betrayals, lawsuits, and the whispers of those left in the shadows of her success. When the gavel fell on Judge Judy for the last time, audiences were left asking not just what was next for her, but how she would be remembered. Will she be remembered as the fearless truth-teller, the grandmother who spoke the words others were too afraid to say? Or will she be remembered as the mogul who turned justice into entertainment, who made fortunes while alienating allies, who demanded fairness for others but was accused of denying it in her own empire? For decades, Judge Judy slammed her gavel as though nothing could shake her. But now, as headlines reveal the fractures behind the facade, the verdict is no longer hers to give. It belongs to the public, to the critics, to the future. And so the question lingers. Does this latest chapter ruin her legacy? Or does it only prove she was playing the toughest role of her life? Yet beneath all the wealth, the power, and the towering ratings, there's an unspoken truth about Judy Sheindlin that rarely makes it into glossy magazine profiles or celebratory interviews. She is a woman who never truly clocked out. Even in her 80s, she wakes early, schedules tightly, and keeps a grip on her empire with the same ferocity she once showed in family court. Retirement is not in her vocabulary. Friends whisper that her greatest fear isn't scandal or betrayal, it's irrelevance. For someone who thrived on being watched, judged, and dissected by millions every day, the silence of fading fame is a kind of death. Behind closed doors, Judy is said to battle the weight of her own image. She built a persona that is unbending, decisive, almost mythic. But in rare moments, those close to her claim she reveals flickers of doubt, not about her choices on the bench, those she stands by with iron certainty, but about how history will frame her. She knows the criticisms. She knows she is called cruel, greedy, and uncompassionate. She knows her show, once considered groundbreaking, is sometimes labeled exploitative by newer generations. And though she shrugs in public, in private, it lingers. The gavel made her immortal, but it also chained her to a performance she could never escape. Her critics say she blurred the line between justice and entertainment until one was indistinguishable from the other, that she turned vulnerable people into daytime spectacle, their lives reduced to punchlines for millions at home, that she played judge, jury, and performer, profiting from human misfortune in the name of ratings. And her defenders? They argue she gave a voice to accountability in an era drowning in excuses, that she cut through lies when few dared to, that she embodied a kind of honesty the system itself often failed to deliver. This tug-of-war defines her legacy now. On one side, the empire, books, shows, syndication deals worth staggering sums, a net worth that cements her as one of the wealthiest figures in television history. On the other, the shadow, the lawsuits, the bitterness of former colleagues, the accusations of betrayal. It is empire against shadow, triumph against tarnish, and the jury deciding it all is not 12 peers in a box, but millions of people remembering what they saw when Judy Sheindlin took the bench. And maybe that is the final paradox of Judge Judy. She spent her entire career demanding clarity, demanding the truth, demanding verdicts carved in stone. Yet when it comes to her own story, no single verdict will ever do. She is both hero and villain. both pioneer and profiteer, both cultural icon and cultural controversy. She is America's favorite judge and one of its most polarizing entertainers. So as the headlines keep breaking, as each lawsuit, revelation, or interview fuels the conversation, the story of Judge Judy remains unfinished. The gavel that once silenced courtrooms now echoes in a larger chamber, the court of public opinion. And in that court, no one knows what the final judgment will be.